Hello, heroes and Zargons. Today I wanted to chat about something completely different, playing the game with young children. My son was 4 when I had my parents ship my HeroQuest boards to me, and he was hooked from the minute he saw the game. Minis, furniture, cards, dice, what more could one ask for? Of course he wanted to play the game, and I couldn't say no. However, there are a number of barriers to playing with small children, especially one-on-one. First, there's the complexity of a turn. A single hero has 5 options, which may not seem like a lot to an adult, but can be an overwhelming amount of choice to a small child. Then, there's an added layer of complexity stemming from controlling multiple heroes, all with different stats and abilities. Finally, there's complexity added by the amount of reading required for the game, and writing necessary for recording details. In addition to complexity problems, there are game difficulty challenges. Mistakes and bad luck can sometimes be punished very harshly. Search for treasure before you search for traps? Maybe you take 2 body points of damage from a chest. Search for traps first? Maybe you still get no treasure and take 1 body point worth of damage anyway. Alternately, maybe you get a wandering monster and 2 polar warbears show up to throw 16 combat dice worth of attack at a single hero before the hero can even react. The complexity problem is pretty easy to solve. We started with 2 characters, the barbarian and the dwarf, and we took them both on a solo quest, really giving my son's heroes a leg up. Our first quest was the Mage of the Mirror Quest 1. By limiting to the barbarian and the dwarf for our first game, I was able to eliminate spells from consideration on our first run-through. I talked him through the turns this first game in a very procedural way, giving him 2 or 3 of the most relevant options and letting him choose from there. When he made a good decision, I reinforced it by saying something like, "Good choice. Do you know why?" And if he said no, explaining how the strategy worked. By the end of the first quest, he had basic procedures in place, knowing to check for traps before treasure, checking every room for secret doors, and keeping his heroes together when opening doors. At the same time, I fixed some of the potentially frustrating randomness in his favor, giving him 3 positive cards from the treasure deck to choose from the first couple of rooms before shuffling a 4th negative card into his options. Now, when we play, I lay out 5 cards face down, 3 treasures, 1 hazard, and 1 wandering monster, and let him pick. If he hits a negative card, I replace it with a positive one so that his odds of a good pull increase. I do this to even out the negatives and ensure that searching for treasure remains exciting. Since we play one-on-one, I help him track gold, which he keeps as a single pool for the party. He keeps the gold he collects in a pile, and I add it all up together at the end of the session. I'm also extremely generous with additional treasures. For weapon racks, I shuffle up the equipment deck from the 2021 edition and let him draw a card. If it's equipment, he keeps it. If it's a potion, there was nothing on the rack. Tables often contain goblin food that heals 1d6 body points. His heroes love to eat food off the tables, and when I started trying to ratchet up the difficulty by presenting him with empty tables, he seemed miffed. So I make empty tables few and far between and just increase the difficulty elsewhere. One tool I may try to make use of to spice up what my son finds on furniture in the future is the furniture deck by HeroQuest. This is one of a series of decks that they have for sale on DriveThruRPG. Each card has a 2d6 random table on it, so you roll 2d6 and consult the table when a hero inspects the piece of furniture. I haven't reviewed all of the cards, but it looks at a glance like the quality of findings varies by type of furniture. So a torture rack has a pretty bad treasure, for example, while a tomb often contains valuable goods. The better the treasure, though, the higher the risks. I showed the table for the table on the screen here, since my son's interest in tables specifically sparked me to take a look at these cards. It's pretty low risk, but also low reward. I'll link HeroQuest's DriveThruRPG account below if you're interested. And just to be clear, this wasn't a paid promotion or anything. I just saw the cards and thought they were a good idea. Another hurdle we had to jump was in-game record keeping. While my son can write, it's a chore for him to keep his own body point records, and it would really slow the game down. So we use skull tokens. Each time a hero takes damage, I drop a skull token on his character sheet. This also makes healing a lot of fun because he gets to scoop up a fistful of those tokens and hand them back to me. I have 6 copies of the game, so we have a lot of extra skull tokens. But if you're tracking 4 heroes with skull tokens and using the backs to represent board features, you may want to opt for beads or some other token instead. With these procedures in place, we played about 3 quests with the combat-only heroes. The first and second solo elf quests, the Rescue of Sir Ragnar, which Terry played with his mother and grandmother. So it served as an introduction both to multiplayer hero questing and as a last run with only martial characters. To introduce the spells, we did wizard training. I set up 4 mini-dungeons designed to exploit the spells from each elemental spell group. I set the wizard on the stairs and handed Terry 3 spells, explained the wizard's statistics and how spellcasting worked, then had him read the spells to me. If your child can't read yet, A, teach them, but B, you can also just explain how the spells work, and they can use the pictures on the cards to identify them. After he read the spells, we started the quest, and I have coached him to think about which spells would help him solve the problems in each room. For example, the fire mini-dungeon had 2 rooms with 1 monster each, where Terry could use his single attack spells, and the last room with 3 monsters that was ideal for casting courage. For air, I had him race goblins across the board, using Tempest to stop a goblin and Swift Wind to go fast, then Genie to unlock a shortcut. It took him 2 tries to get the sequencing right in that one. For Earth, I put a room that needed to be circumvented by pass-through rock and a wounded hero in need of rescuing who could be protected with stone skin and heal body. For Water, I dropped a 10 body point ogre with 1 mind point and a line of enemies that could be bypassed via Veil of Mist. After he beat all of these scenarios, we added the elf and the wizard to the mix. At this point, 2 card holders became extremely helpful to keep the spells and items straight. With these steps, we were able to get up to playing full-blown HeroQuest in about 5 or 6 quests. We're now running through the quests in both the main quest pack and the Frozen Horror quest pack, which is Terry's favorite. I use the base game quests to load the heroes up with loot and gold that they can take on the Frozen Horror quests. So we go exploring in the Frozen Horror about once every 4 sessions. Now that my son has mastered the procedure and basic strategies, I've begun introducing house rules to the game. We've started having wandering monsters show up when fights take too long, to his great surprise and delight. The treasure deck, too, is getting a little riskier. So far, my son has rolled with it pretty well, but he has yet to deal with the setback of a character death. I'm sure there will be a video on this channel when it happens. In any case, I hope these tips help some other old-timers introduce HeroQuest to their children sooner rather than later. Terry wanted to share his experiences with the game, so we've recorded an interview as a series of shorts that will release over the next 6 days. He'd love it if you'd give them a listen. For now, if you've introduced your children to HeroQuest and you have problems or solutions I didn't mention here, let's plot together in the comments below.